The M4A1 has been a staple of first-person shooter games since, well, dare I say, the dawn of the modern era setting for first-person shooter games. And while the weapon normally takes on a bit of a calm and collected demeanor, it has a very, very different DNA in Battlefield 6, which makes it an absolute beast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our review of the M4A1 carbine in Battlefield 6, the carbine that has quickly swept across the player base as one of the most commonly picked weapons, and for good reason. Today, we'll be diving into the stats that make up the M4A1, talk about its pros, its cons, but most importantly, how you can also play off its character with some attachments to make it just that little bit better. I also want to quickly pass on a massive thanks to EA, who have sponsored today's weapon review, so that is greatly appreciated. More weapon reviews are coming real soon, guys, so you know the drill by now. Leave a like if you enjoyed the format, subscribe for more, and leave a comment down below on which review you want to see me do next. But for now, how about we dive into the one thing we've got in front of us today, that being the M4A1. As always, we're going to kick off with the damage model for the M4A1 here, and this is interesting, isn't it, guys? I don't know about you, but when I think about the historical implementations of the M4 in other games, it has always been the sort of adaptable mid-range powerhouse, but not here. The M4A1 is rocking an incredibly potent maximum damage of 25 up until the 10 meter mark before we start seeing that steep decline all the way down to the minimum damage of 14 beyond the 75 meter mark, which basically means that we are doubling our bullet to kill requirement from the business end of town all the way down to that minimum damage range. But the sharp decline actually comes pretty early in the piece here, stepping 2 bullet to kill thresholds down by the 35 meter mark, which again feels brutal for a weapon platform that holds this almost expected character about it being a medium range performer. But if the damage models are anything to go by here, then the M4A1 has promptly stepped into the CQC realm with a intention of being dominant. With the game's default headshot multiplier of 1.34 times in action, that's only further emphasized here as well. 34 damage to the head in CQC means that we're rocking a potential 3-shot kill here, and the importance of that simply cannot be understated. That is a diabolical amount of damage that is going to reward the more accurate of you watching. But what is truly diabolical about this thing is the time to kill. When you jam the weapon's 900 RPM fire rate into the equation, we catch ourselves on a cracking baseline time to kill of 200 milliseconds within that maximum damage range, or 133 milliseconds if you crack headshots. It really goes without saying, guys, that this is the most potent weapon that we've reviewed so far in the game, and really sums up the reason why you guys are seeing this weapon being used so often by the community right now. As you cross into the medium range engagements, the potency does take a monumental hit, landing at around about the 270 to 386 millisecond time to kill range, with the minimum damage time to kill range of 599 milliseconds. But I'm just gonna go ahead and spoil the party for you guys on this one. You ain't gonna be hitting that kind of TTK at 75 meters with this thing ever. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. And you know what? Let's talk about why you aren't going to be hitting those kinds of time to kills at 75 meters, shall we? This right here is the recoil of the M4. Now, thankfully, this thing holds a pretty straight and narrow recoil kick, punching predominantly upwards with a very light kick to the right. So from that side of the equation, that's a very manageable recoil pattern. However, when you remember that I take all of these recoil graphs to scale, then you'll understand that this is by far the weapon with the harshest vertical kick that we've looked at yet. This thing, while having an incredibly smooth pattern, kicks like an absolute mule in that direction, which is very uncharacteristic for an M4A1 in a first-person shooter game. The bloom, while in aggregate is pretty mild, also kicks on pretty early within the burst as well, at around about the 6th shot, which means you're really going to want to start considering some tap firing come that 6th to 8th shot anyway. Hipfire wise, this is also nothing to really write home about either. Fun fact, 3 shots of this pattern that I've got in the graph here were actually so far off of the target board when I was testing that they didn't even fit into my graphic. So keep in mind here that there are 3 more shots off into the stratosphere here somewhere that I couldn't even record properly. I will say that to the Hipfire's credit, it does cluster relatively nicely within the green zone of our graph here, so while it may be a little bit left to be desired out of the box, there's certainly some stuff we can do with it in the future as well. Ammo wise, we've got the standard 30 round mag here off the back of a 217 round ammo pool, of which is reloaded in 2.2 seconds. And this is actually a pretty snappy reload feeling for a weapon that's designed for CQC combat. If I'm being honest, there's only very few times where I've felt caught out by the M4's reload, just given how quick it actually feels, especially against the PW3A5 that we reviewed last time. It bodes well for the CQC focus focus, hey? The final considerations here come in the form of the baseline ABS speed of 200 milliseconds and a muzzle velocity of 630 meters per second out of the box, which is actually pretty competitive and leaves you with a pretty consistent little beast for drilling moving targets at some degree of range. So that is a nice little bonus as well. Okay, so that right there, folks, is Battlefield 6's take on the M4A1 from top to bottom. And I'll be honest, this weapon really took me by surprise when I first started giving it a go all the way back in the beta of this game. It was far from what I had expected, and at times it felt a touch alien. You know, who is this angry, aggressive, almost spite-filled carbine, and what happened to my cool, calm, collected M4A1? But now, after it being the first weapon that I've managed to get the mastery badge on, I can once again really say that I understand why this weapon is a fan favorite in the community right now. Because in CQC, this is hands down one of the best, dare I even say, the best weapon in the game right now from a consistency perspective. And dare I even say, the best gun that you unlock in the early days of the game with your progression. Now, I don't like making gross sweeping statements about metas or anything like that, especially in the Battlefield world, but if I was to make an assignment of any kind to any weapon in this game, then this would kind of be it at the moment. The amount of times that I've fried an enemy with this thing in close quarters combat is just too high to count. And let me tell you guys that when you get into the flow state and just start chaining from target to target, the M4A1 will reward you with some of the snappiest kills that you can score in this game. Because of that, it can be very easy to get carried away with this thing though, and while it is an absolute death machine, you have to remember that you're hamstrung by a 30-round mag, which will sneak up at you at the most inopportune moments from time to time. I know that is a cautionary tale that's as old as time, but with the M4, I caught myself getting into trouble far more times than I'd care to admit. It's also worth pointing out that due to how fast the rate of fire is on this thing, the bloom also has a habit of sneaking up on you as well. Let me be the first to warn you guys that spread control through some trigger discipline is going to be an absolute must here. It's also all be required if you ever dream of extending the gun's range a little bit. Just holding down the trigger and hoping for the best is a surefire way to get yourself sent straight back to the respawn screen, especially if you're versing someone who's, say, got an assault rifle by comparison. Anyway, we've established the pros and the cons of the M4. It's time to reel in the difference a bit here between these two with some attachments and some loadouts here. Now, much like our last review, guys, I've got 3 kits for you today. One of them being a bit of a starter kit that acts as a stepping stone towards our final form, but then when you get there, we've got an all-out aggression loadout and a slightly more reserved kit that I refer to as my, dare I say, Swiss Army knife loadout of the M4 family. For build number 1 here, I recommend the SU-123 1.50 sight, the 11.5-inch commando barrel, the standard suppressor, the alloy vertical grip, 30-round fast mag, FMG ammunition, and the 50mm blue laser. All in all, this takes the kit's recoil and attempts to tame it in a bit, while also not sacrificing mobility and responsiveness for its target range CQC. The recoil pattern gets a small improvement vertically, which does have the offset of condensing the horizontal recoil a bit, which gives it off as being slightly harsher, so just be a bit prepared to deal with that as well. However, the real benefit here lies in the hipfire accuracy and the reload speed. As you guys can see, hipfire spread is a lot tighter from the horizontal deviation perspective with this version of the build, which takes, you know, the hipfire on the M4 from being a last-ditch effort to an actual tool in the M4's pocket that you can safely rely on. And then when you throw the magazine in there, I think we get the weapon's reload speed all the way down to the sub 2-second mark, which feels incredible for a weapon that's designed to operate in close quarters combat. However, as you find yourself maxing out the weapon and making some serious steps in the attachment progression line here, this leads us on to our ultimate aggressor build for the M4 here. A lot remains the same with the following minor changes. We're taking the sight off and now relying on our very clean 1.0 iron sights. We're switching the standard suppressor for the lightened suppressor, which incorporates some additional recoil control into the picture. And in order to free up the required attachment points, we're also going to rock the 30-round standard mag as opposed to the fast mag. Now, I don't know if this is like the best potential loadout you can get on the M4, or if this is the quote-unquote meta per se, but goddamn guys, I would be straight up lying to you all if I told you that I wasn't going on absolute rampages with this setup. I've yet to come across another piece of kit that has felt so dominating in close quarters combat, but also so reliable in the midfield when you burst fire it accordingly. If you're like me and you're the equivalent of a raccoon with a lit firework up its ass, always pushing enemy positions, give this a go because I promise you it's gonna pay off. This is some of the most fun I've I've had in this game so far with this very weapon setup. However, if you're a slightly more reserved player but still keen on making the most of your endgame attachments on the M4, I bring you my Swiss Army knife kit here. Here we're rocking the OSA 7 1.0 times sight, the 14.5-inch carbine barrel, the lightened suppressor, the stippled stubby grip, the 30-round standard mag, and the FMJ ammunition. Here we've actually got less attachments on the weapon by primarily sacrificing the inclusion of a laser sight for even more improvement in the weapon's recoil control, and I mean, look, the results really speak for themselves, don't they? At this point, the M4 is not just a crazy CQC beast, but it also holds an incredibly tight recoil pattern and bloom spread that feels competitive even out to the 40-meter mark, dare I say. Now, unfortunately, because we're missing a laser sight and we've gone with the extended barrel this time, we are sacrificing the hip fire on this thing completely. I mean, the hip fire is now bastardized, but given that you aren't going to be sprinting around like a mad thing anymore, as often with this kit, it kind of is not a huge loss if this is the kind of playstyle that you're aiming to achieve. Aiming down sights all the time with this thing and cracking headshots is your prerogative now, even at medium to longer ranges, and this kit will reliably do so should you're able to control the bloom, which just requires a little bit of fanning of the trigger. Anyway, absolute legends, that is going to be today's weapon review for the M4A1 carbine in Battlefield 6. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on the weapon. Are you enjoying it? Is it your style? Or is this the first inanimate object you're planning on getting a restraining order from? Very keen to hear thoughts. Once again, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like. It does go a long way to supporting the channel. Get subscribed for more Battlefield 6 content hitting your eyeballs very, very soon. And until next time, I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace out, guys. Have a good one.